Welcome back to AI Paper Podcasts. Have you ever felt like you're just perpetually trying to catch up, with this accelerating train of information?
Absolutely.
Especially in fields like AI and machine learning, right? It often feels like scientific, technological knowledge, it's just exploding. Exponentially.
Yeah, that's the perception. Every week, it's new papers, new models.
New breakthroughs bombarding us. But what if that feeling, that whole perception of an information explosion, what if it isn't actually accurate for, actual knowledge?
It's a really interesting question. We all see the sheer volume of publications. It's undeniable.
Yeah.
But is that volume the same as knowledge growth?
Right.
And that's exactly what this fascinating new paper dives into. It's called Scientific and Technological Knowledge Grows Linearly Over Time by Huquan Kang and a whole team of colleagues.
And their main finding is, it's pretty surprising. After looking at these enormous data sets, they basically conclude that scientific and tech knowledge actually grows linearly.
Linearly.
Yeah.
Not exponentially.
Yeah. Just think about that. Linear. It completely flips how we usually think about progress, doesn't it?
It really does. And the key to figuring this out was this novel metric they developed. It's called the Knowledge Quantification Index, or KQI.
KQI.
And it measures knowledge by looking at how uncertainty is reduced within a knowledge network. So mostly by analyzing citation structures, how papers build on each other.
So that feeling we get, that constant surge of new stuff, especially for those of us, in fast fields like AI, the paper says that's likely an illusion.
Kind of an illusion, yeah. They argue it stems from these local, rapid bursts of growth, like around major breakthroughs.
Okay.
And we see those bursts and maybe mistakenly think the whole system is accelerating exponentially, globally.
Right. So this really changes how we should look at progress, at innovation. For you listening, if you're an AI researcher, an ML engineer, this could mean, reevaluating the pace of our fields.
Exactly. And maybe how we sift through all this information to find the genuine advances, focusing on the signal maybe, not just the noise.
Okay, yeah, let's unpack that a bit more, because for years, this idea of exponential knowledge growth, it's been pretty widely accepted.
It is.
And it seems logical, right? You see the explosion in publications, more scientists than ever, new journals popping up constantly. It really feels like an information explosion.
Definitely feels that way.
I mean, as someone trying to keep up with AI, the struggle, keeping track of all the new models, the techniques. I've definitely felt like I needed, a personal AI just to summarize the weekly ArcSIF dump.
I know the feeling.
Yeah.
And that perception, it's been around a while. It shows up in academic literature way back, like 1961.
Wow, okay.
But it hasn't gone totally unchallenged. Even back in 1962, you had Nobel laureate Fritz Albert Lippmann questioning it. He argued, maybe exponential growth is just impossible because of our cognitive limits. Humans don't exactly evolve exponentially fast.
That's a fair point.
And more recently, some studies have even hinted that maybe the rate of truly critical discoveries is declining. That maybe the sheer weight of existing literature could actually be, hindering new insights, not helping them.
So, okay, the volume of papers is definitely exponential. We see that. How do Kang and his team argue we're misinterpreting this information explosion? What's the core misunderstanding here?
They draw this really crucial distinction, something we often blur, I think. The difference between the growth of publications, which is exponential, and the actual growth of knowledge itself.
Okay, publications versus knowledge.
Exactly. Publications have soared, no question.
Right.
But measuring the growth of knowledge, that's always been the tricky part, which is why this debate has kind of rumbled on until now.
Which brings us to the big question. How on earth do you quantify something as abstract as knowledge scientifically?
Right. And their answer is this, KQI, the Knowledge Quantification Index. Think of it like this. Imagine a huge, messy library. Books everywhere, no order. That's high uncertainty, right?
Yeah, total chaos.
Now imagine you start organizing. You link books by topic, build shelves, create a system where each book relates to others. The KQI basically measures how much order or structure you've created from that initial chaos.
Okay.
It looks at how publications cite each other, forming this network. It quantifies the reduction in uncertainty when information becomes, useful and reliable because of how it fits into that larger structure. It's about the organization, not just the raw number of books.
So it's measuring the structure that emerges from the information network. How do they actually calculate it then?
They use concepts from information theory, specifically Shannon entropy, which measures sort of the raw information content, and structural entropy, which measures the information held within the network structure itself.
Right.
By looking at the difference between these two, the KQI isolates the knowledge represented purely by the structure of the information, not just the amount of data. And apparently this measure holds up. It correlates well with things like the impact of classic literature and Nobel Prize work.
Okay, that sounds pretty robust. So they have this KQI lens. How did they apply it? You mentioned massive data sets.
Oh yeah, truly massive. We're talking 213 million publications from the Microsoft Academic Graph, spanning like 1800 all the way to 2020.
Wow. That's comprehensive.
And for the technology side, they used 7.6 million patents from the USPTO database from 1976 to 2020. So a huge historical scope.
Okay.
But interestingly, they didn't just hang their hat on KQI alone. They looked for other evidence too.
Like what?
Well, for instance, they studied how long it takes to prove mathematical conjectures, these big unsolved problems. They looked at 61 conjectures proven since 1960. And their analysis showed that the time it actually takes to prove these complex things hasn't significantly changed over the decades.
So the time to proof remains steady.
Pretty much. Which offers this, independent piece of supporting evidence. It points towards a steady, linear pace of human knowledge acquisition, not an accelerating one.
Fascinating. So, okay, they crunched all this data, publications, patents, conjectures. What was the big takeaway? The undeniable truth they found.
Well, it's right there in the paper's title. The linear reality of knowledge growth. If you look at their figure 2, it's really striking.
Okay.
You see the number of publications and patents just shooting up exponentially like everyone expects. But then you see the KQI for both science and technology.
Yeah.
And it's an almost perfectly straight line. Linear growth.
Just a steady straight line cutting through that exponential curve. Wow.
Exactly.
And this linear thing, it wasn't just for science overall, right? Did it hold up in specific fields?
Remarkably so. They found this linear pattern held true across 19 major disciplines and, get this, 292 secondary subjects. 292.
Good grief.
Yeah. And that includes fields very relevant for you listening now: mathematics, psychology, computer science, biology. The linearity holds.
So even in fields like computer science that feel like they're moving at light speed?
The underlying knowledge growth, measured by KQI, is still linear. Now, the rate of that linear growth, the slope of the line, that varies between fields. Some might advance faster per year than others. But the fundamental pattern, linear.
So the data really hammers it home. Producing actual knowledge is much harder, much steadier than just producing papers.
Exactly. It's more like a marathon at a steady pace, not an ever-accelerating sprint. Which really helps explain that feeling of an explosion we're seeing, the sprint of publications, not the marathon of knowledge.
Which leads to a pretty profound, maybe slightly worrying thought. If knowledge grows linearly, but publications grow exponentially, what does that mean for the average paper?
Yeah, that's the implication, isn't it? It suggests that the amount of new knowledge contained within each individual publication might actually be declining over time.
More papers, but less actual new insight per paper, on average.
It certainly points that way. And it raises big questions about the efficiency of how we do science, how we share knowledge.
Okay, so how does that play out? Did they find evidence for this sort of diminishing return per paper?
They did. They looked at the distribution of knowledge contribution and found something even more skewed than the usual Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule.
More skewed how?
Get this. They found that a staggering 90.73% of the total knowledge quantified by KQI comes from just 9.27% of the publications.
Wow, so less than 10% of the papers account for over 90% of the knowledge growth.
Exactly. And conversely, vast majority of papers, over 90% of them, contribute only a tiny fraction, less than 10% of the new knowledge.
That is incredibly imbalanced. It really highlights how a small fraction of work truly drives progress.
It does. And it connects back to that idea you mentioned earlier. Maybe the sheer volume of literature does cause some stagnation and makes finding those crucial knowledge-rich papers harder.
Like finding the needle in an ever-expanding haystack. And maybe many of the new needles are just slightly different versions of older ones.
Precisely. And think about complexity. As fields mature, they get more complex, right? The existing body of knowledge becomes vast.
Sure.
So any single incremental advance might seem almost trivial compared to everything already known. This leads to those diminishing returns. you need huge effort for marginal gains. Unless you get a paradigm shift, something that resets the stage, creates a whole new perspective.
Yeah.
That's where you might see a change.
Okay, so knowledge grows linearly, but you mentioned paradigm shifts. Does the study account for those big breakthroughs that do seem to accelerate things?
It does. They talk about inflection points in the KQI growth. These aren't points where it suddenly becomes exponential, but points where the rate of linear growth changes. It shifts to a new, steeper, but still linear path.
So the line gets steeper after a breakthrough.
Exactly. And what's really compelling is that these inflection points often line up remarkably well with major developments in a field.
Like what kind of developments?
Think big breakthroughs, the emergence of new paradigms, sometimes even the birth of entirely new fields of study. It's like the field hits some kind of critical mass, maybe unlocks a new set of problems, and then knowledge production accelerates onto a new, faster, but still linear track.
How do they measure that connection to breakthroughs?
They use another metric called the CD index. It measures the disruptiveness of research, basically how much a paper causes subsequent work to cite it, while ignoring the papers it cited.
Okay, so a sign that it really changed the conversation.
Right, sign of a breakthrough that shifts the foundation. And they found a strong correlation. Fields experiencing high disruptiveness, these breakthroughs, were significantly more likely to show these KQI inflection points.
Okay, this is super relevant for our audience. Can you give some examples from AI or related fields?
Sure. The paper and its supporting info have some great ones. For computer science as a whole, they note an inflection point around 1965.65. Think about what was happening then, foundational stuff in operating systems languages.
Right, the early days really solidifying.
Exactly. Then cognitive science, an inflection point around 1974.61. That lines up almost perfectly with the term being coined. The Cognitive Science Society forming, the field establishing itself.
Okay. What about NLP? That's a big one for us.
Natural language processing shows several inflection points. Around 1960.59, maybe the early symbolic AI approaches, then 1974.20, 1987.90, perhaps shifts towards statistical methods, and crucially, a recent one around 2014.90.
2014, that's going to be deep learning, right? Word embeddings, transformers starting to emerge.
Almost certainly the dawn of the modern deep learning era in NLP. They also mention nanotechnology, with points around 1974 and 1998, perhaps reflecting conceptual origins, and then a surge in activity.
And pattern recognition.
Pattern recognition also had several, 1958, 1966, 1987, and again around 2013.50. You can almost map these to shifts from perceptrons to more complex ML, and then the deep learning impact again.
So it's these local bursts, these accelerations onto new linear paths driven by disruptive ideas that create the feeling of exponential growth.
That seems to be the argument, yes.
Yeah.
We experience these exciting periods of acceleration within our specific subfields.
But when you zoom out, look at the whole history, the global picture across decades. The overall trend remains linear. It's just a series of connected linear segments, some steeper than others.
Precisely. Not a smooth, continuous exponential curve.
Okay, so what are the big implications here? If knowledge growth is linear, how should that change things? For policy, for researchers?
Well, it has pretty significant implications. For policymakers, for funding agencies, understanding this linear trend could help set more realistic expectations. It might inform how resources are allocated, maybe prioritizing research aimed at creating those disruptive inflection points rather than just incremental gains.
Fostering breakthrough potential.
Right. And for researchers, for all of us, it suggests maybe adopting a more measured view of progress, not getting swept up in the hype cycle of exponential claims, perhaps.
Yeah, it's a good reminder, isn't it? Don't get overwhelmed by the perceived explosion of knowledge. Focus instead on managing the very real explosion of information.
They're trying to identify that truly valuable knowledge-generating signal within all the noise. It really emphasizes quality over just quantity.
Absolutely. Now, you mentioned limitations earlier. Every study has them.
Of course. And the authors acknowledge them. KQI is still a relatively new metric, right?
Yeah.
It needs more validation, more widespread adoption, perhaps.
Sure.
And their analysis was primarily based on citation networks in academic papers and patents. Didn't really dig into, say, the semantic meaning within those citations or other forms of knowledge sharing.
So room for future work there.
Definitely. Expanding to different media, maybe using more complex knowledge graphs. There's lots more to explore to really solidify this understanding.
Okay, so let's bring this home for our listeners, especially those deep in AI and ML. If overall scientific and tech knowledge grows linearly, what does that really imply for the pace of fundamental breakthroughs in our field? Like, say, the development of AGI
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Are we on a steady, linear path towards it? Maybe punctuated by inflection points like deep learning? Or could there be a truly disruptive event, an inflection point unlike any before, that genuinely changes the trajectory?
It makes you think. And given those diminishing returns per publication, that heavy skew where only a fraction of papers drive most knowledge, what do we do about that?
Yeah, how do we get more efficient?
Do we need new methods, different community structures, ways to better structure information into real insights beyond just churning out more papers? Maybe it's not about reading less, but reading, I don't know, smarter.
Focusing on identifying those potentially disruptive, truly novel contributions amidst the flood.
Perhaps really critically evaluating how much fundamental new insight a paper offers versus just an incremental tweak.
Definitely something to chew on as you navigate the latest research in your own corner of the field. Thanks for unpacking that paper with us.
My pleasure. It's a really thought-provoking piece of work.